Chers téléspectateurs, bienvenue sur Afrique 24. L'Afrique est l'un des continents qui dispose d'importantes ressources naturelles. Mais malheureusement, ces ressources naturelles ne profitent pas assez aux populations qui vivent pour la plupart dans l'extrême pauvreté. Un paradoxe d'ailleurs remarqué par les experts qui estiment que c'est la conséquence des fuites des capitaux. Et pour en parler dans ce présent numéro de décryptage, nous recevons pour vous M. Alvin Mosioma. Il est le directeur exécutif de l'ONG Tax Justice Network Africa, une ONG justement qui lutte contre ces fuites de capitaux. Dites-nous, M. Alvin, vous avez fait observer que l'Afrique perd beaucoup d'argent dans les flux illicites de capitaux. Pourquoi cela?
The continent is endowed. It's well accepted globally that the African continent is endowed with significant natural resources. When you look at across all different minerals, gold, diamond, oil, and other minerals. And of course, what we note, however, is that the extraction of these natural resources are not leading to the kind of benefits.
Et pourquoi les institutions judiciaires ne prennent pas à bras le corps toutes ces dérives?
Well, the question of what is legal and what is illegal is a thin line. Many a times it's actually purposely exploiting this gray area, the gray zone between what is legal and what is illegal. We must also recognize that many of our countries in the continent have very weak laws. They have very weak policies and very weak laws. They have signed contracts that are very to the disadvantage of many of these countries, and then companies use those gaps in the laws, the gaps in the contracts, to quote-unquote legally avoid paying the taxes. But ultimately, the result is the same. If the company evades or avoids paying tax, the outcome is the same. The result is the same, that ultimately countries are denied the revenue they need to invest in the different programs to grow the economies.
Aujourd'hui, le malaise est énorme. La pauvreté des populations. Et que faut-il faire à votre avis?
That's a good question. I mean, if you look at the investment priority, there are studies that shows that the financial gap in the continent for the countries to achieve, for instance, the Sustainable Development Goals, they will need going forward significant investment in the different sectors, in education, in health, in public infrastructure, in provision of water and other social amenities. So when government lose this amount of resources, when the government lose this money, what that basically means is that the government is then not able to invest in these sectors, and that of course means inability of governments to be able to address these very fundamental challenges that are the basis for the poverty that we see in the continent.
Oui, mais est-ce que la vision politique en elle-même ne doit pas être changée?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a long process. Changing policies is not an easy thing. It's a struggle. Of course, you have to recognize that it's vested interests. There are people that are benefiting from the current gaps and weaknesses in law. So they, of course, fight back in terms of efforts to seal those gaps. But nevertheless, I think that we as an organization have managed to see some positive outcome. Recently, Tax Justice Network Africa won a case that they'd filed against the Kenyan government on a double tax agreement that they'd signed against Mauritius, and we sued the government against it, and the court ruled in our favor. So that is an example where you see that some of our efforts are also yielding positive outcomes.
Au-delà des discours, quelles mesures faut-il préconiser pour les États?
I think there are a few things that need to be done. Domestically, I think that governments need to review and strengthen their fiscal systems. They need to strengthen their laws. They need to identify where the gaps are that many of the unscrupulous multinational companies are using to evade or avoid paying taxes. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done at the domestic level. But more importantly, I think that internationally there's need for increased transparency on the financial system. So we need, for example, a reform of the international reporting standards to ensure that companies are reporting their profits on a country-by-country basis, that the exchange of information among the different tax jurisdictions is streamlined and it's made in a manner that countries are able to access the information on the financial statement of these companies. We need to ensure that there's corporate transparency by ensuring that we know who are the beneficial owners of some of these companies. So in essence, we need global transparency, but also at the national level, we need to strengthen the legislative framework. We need to invest in building the capacity and strengthening some of our institutions at the national level to be able to tackle some of these problems.
Au vu de la gravité de la situation ainsi que des sommes faramineuses qui sont perdues, est-ce qu'il n'y a pas d'urgence pour les pays de conjuguer les efforts de lutte contre ces flux illicites?
Well, not the same. Of course, each country is different. We are not calling for unified systems of taxation. But at the national level, what we are calling, between the African countries, there's need for collaboration. Obviously, there's need for countries, particularly to address the phenomenon of tax competition and race to the bottom. Countries need to work together more collaboratively. They need to share information. They need to share intelligence with each other through the different regional institutions that exist, ECOWAS and SADC and the East Africa Community. They can work together more closely to be able to share information and strengthen their institutions. But ultimately, it is also national level laws that needs to be changed, needs to be strengthened to ensure that governments are efficiently and effectively raising the resources they need to finance the development.
Vous êtes engagé depuis quelques années avec votre ONG, l'objectif étant de contribuer à la lutte contre les flux financiers illicites. Comment comptez-vous poursuivre votre combat?
Well, I think that we'll continue to do what we are doing. I think on one side we are investing a lot in our efforts to build capacity of the different stakeholders, be they parliamentarians, civil society organizations, journalists who we recognize as very important actors in this space. So we'll continue investing in our capacity building program and outreach programs on one side. But on the other side, of course, our policy engagement and our policy work in engaging the different institutions, both at the national, regional, and the global level, to continue advocating for the need to close some of these loopholes that are enabling African governments to lose the significant resources through the illicit financial flows.